Hi everybody, welcome back to another thrilling episode of Budget Gaming. So, the biggest question coming out right now, everyone's been talking about it. You look on YouTube for hot videos from YouTube influencers. The big thing coming out is a Sega Genesis Mini. I know I'm pretty excited about the idea of it. However, the idea, right? They're coming out with an $80 system, 2 controllers, looks like a miniaturized Sega Model 1 system. The games have been lovingly handled by M2, which did all of the ports that you've seen like on the Switch and other systems. So they have masters added. 42 games, $80. Some games never seen before in the United States. However, if you are trying to figure out what is the best bang for your buck, is it actually a good deal? Now, don't get me wrong. I think $80 is a great deal with regards to the Sega Genesis Mini. You look at the number of quality games for the system, 42 games. There are games that have never been released ever whatsoever in the United States, or even the world for that matter. And this is the first time individuals will be able to play these games lovingly on their systems coming out worldwide in only a matter of weeks. So, but the thing is, not everyone's going to have necessarily the money and desire to necessarily spend $80 to get the system. So maybe they just want to play a lot of good games for the Sega Genesis. Now, looking for Sega Genesis games can be a very challenging feat and can be very expensive, very cost prohibitive. Unless you bought the games years and years ago where you're only maybe 1 or 2 generations out, you're starting to see games that are 2, 3, or 4 generations older becoming very expensive. Now, definitely the retro game scene has caused a lot of the prices to go up. I remember years back when you could pick up a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga for about $100, $150. Now you're looking at about 4 to 5 times that price. And that's been a matter of less than, 20 years since the game came out. So the game came out at $50, now it's 15 times the value. Granted though, it's definitely one of the holy grails as far as the Sega Saturn goes. I know it's not necessarily the best example, but it just goes to show what the price of games can be. You take a look today. You try looking for, say, Panzer Dragoon for the original Sega Saturn. You're looking at $70, $75 for the game. I remember being able to find that game for $10 on eBay. This was probably, 2005, 2006, 2008. So you weren't bending over backwards. You weren't getting, having to spend a whole lot of money. So if you just want to play games, there's lots of different avenues. Definitely I'm not going to delve into things like RetroPies, emulations, any kind of online hacking and such. There are many videos on YouTube and other sites to find out that information. What I'm talking about more is legitimate options in this day and age, current generation. So, last gen we had Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection, which had over 40 games, Sega Genesis, that you can play on your PS3. Now there's a comparable one, Sega Genesis Classics Collection on the PS4, Switch, I believe Xbox One as well, which has 50 games. The idea of these retro compilations is not new for Sega. They decided to do it for the first time on the Sega Dreamcast with the Smash Pack Volume 1. If you were following it back then when I was a Dreamcast gamer, you thought to yourself, there's a Volume 1, surely there's going to be a Volume 2, and sadly there never was. Thankfully we got 12 great games. That was Sonic the Hedgehog, Golden Axe, Shining Force, Breath of War, Streets of Rage 2, Columns, Phantasy Star 2, Vector Man, Altered Beast, Revenge of Shinobi, Sega Swirl, which is a really great puzzle game, and Virtua Cop 2. And you say, wait a second, that's not a Genesis game. I know. Virtua Cop 2, yes, it was released on the Sega Saturn, one of the great stunner gun games. However, it also came on the PC. I believe the PC game was ported over to the Dreamcast. It wasn't a port of the Saturn version. I don't think it was necessarily a port of the arcade hardware. So it's a great compilation. Certainly at this time during the generation, the Dreamcast, we weren't seeing kinds of compilations of this size, this volume, until certainly PlayStation 1 did it, but Nintendo was kind of behind the curve. They were still on cartridges. So the biggest thing you saw were things like the original Nintendo games, for instance, of Mario and such, on a compilation cartridge on the Super Nintendo. So, but, for instance, this Genesis collection on PS3, looked on Amazon, you can find it for $13. That's a lot of games. You're talking about like 50 games. Granted though, it's a little different from the PS4 version because this one actually can unlock Sega Master System Classics, which actually makes this a pretty neat deal. However, what we want to do is compare apples to apples, current gen with what's available versus the Sega Genesis Mini. So a lot of the games, there is a lot of overlap. You figure when you got 50 games versus 42 games as far as these monster compilations, there's going to be a lot of overlap. So I made a nice list, and taking a look at some of the games, the question is that, is it really worth paying a good $50 to $40 more, maybe $60 more in comparison? Right now I looked on Amazon, it's about $20 for the PS4 compilation, in comparison to the $80 you're going to spend for the Sega Genesis Mini. So a couple of games that you might find on the PS4 or Switch compilation are games like Alien Storm, Alien Soldier, Biohazard Battle, Bonanza Brothers, Columns 3. There's also Crackdown, Decap Attack, eSWAT, Fatal Labyrinth, Flicky, Game Ground, Galaxy Force 2, Golden Axe 2 and 3, Phantasy Star 2 and 3, Ristar, Shadow Dancer, Secret of Shinobi, Shining Force 2, Shining in the Darkness. You also have Sonic 3D Blast, Streets of Rage 3, Super Thunderblade, Sword of Vermilion, The Revenge of Shinobi, ToeJam and Earl in Panic and Funkatron, Victor Man 2, and Wonder Boy 3 Monster Slayer. These are all games that are exclusive on the PS4 compilation. They are not on the Sega Genesis Mini. If you were to go take a look on eBay, try to figure out if you want to buy these games, because not necessarily all these games are going to be on your marketplace, whether Nintendo eShop, Xbox, PlayStation, you're not necessarily going to find all these games. So if you want to try to find these games to try to make an accurate compilation, because maybe you don't want to pick up this, you want to have original hardware, original software, you're looking at a $1,110 cost. That's taking a look at about the average trending cost based on what's on eBay, as well as some of the lowest ones that I could find for games that were not as common. For instance, on this first list, Alien Soldier was released over on the Mega Drive. We're talking about the Eastern Hemisphere, Japan. Cheapest one I could find was $440. $440. So to be able to have this in the PS4 collection, this Treasure Classic is, certainly a masterpiece. We know Treasure does great work. That's a huge value. Unfortunately, this game, this masterpiece, is not on the Sega Genesis Mini, which baffles my mind. However, not to be outdone, the Sega Genesis Mini has a lot of value to it. Again, M2, the masters at bringing old games to current generation hardware, they are masters of their trade. They don't just find an emulator, dump the ROM, call it a day. No, these folks will look for the original code. They will decompile the hardware. They'll get an arcade board. They'll be able to take the code from it and be able to do anything they want with it to make it better than before. You take a look at games on the eShop that Sega released as far as their classics go. These aren't just regular ROM dumps that they just ported over to the Switch. No, these are like the best of the best versions of the game. You best can compare it to is like taking a look at games from back during the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and then you had the PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16 for the United States. So, classic example, you look at Castlevania Dracula X on Super Nintendo. Good game. Probably it's the most expensive Castlevania game on the Super Nintendo, but it's still a country miles shot away from the quality, the splendor of Chino Rondo on the PC Engine. The forerunner of Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the PlayStation 1 and the Sega Saturn. So definitely as far as on the NEC, PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16, we were able to see the best versions of many arcade games. Almost all the arcade games, if it had a port on that generation, that system tended to have the best versions of it. So, comparing it, we know that Sega Genesis Mini is going to have the best versions of these games. So what games do we have to look forward to that are not on the compilation discs? So, Alicia Dragoon, certainly a great game. We have Castle of Illusion, so one of the great, Disney Sega compilation games, partnerships, beautiful. Castlevania Bloodlines. Are you kidding me? Castlevania Bloodlines. So we know how hot Castlevania is. Certainly, Bloodstain came out. There's still a lot of excitement about it. So that's a great game. Contra Hardcore, right? There's new talk of a new Contra game coming out. So Contra Hardcore, definitely one of the best games on the system, and it's on the Sega Genesis Mini. You cannot find it. So great partnerships in these two titans on the system from Konami that came on the Genesis, coming out on the Sega Genesis Mini. Earthworm Jim, Echo the Dolphin, Eternal Champions, Ghouls and Ghosts, Mega Man The Wily Wars. And you think, oh, it's a Mega Man game. Aren't there a bunch of Mega Man compilations? Yes, but Mega Man The Wily Wars. This was the only Mega Man game released on Sega's 16-bit system. If you're in the United States, you had no way to play it unless you were able to play it online on the Sega channel. No cartridge was released. However, if you were in Europe, you try to look for it today, you're going to spend hundreds of dollars to find this game. Same thing in Japan. The Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive in Japan was not a popular system, so finding the game is definitely an expensive endeavor. Monster World 4, a game never released, on as an English translation. It came out only in Japan. We're seeing that here. Road Rash 2, Street Fighter 2, Strider, there's Super Fantasy Zone, Thunder Force 3, and Mickey Mouse World of Illusion. So definitely lots of heavy hitters. I mean, certain ones that we're taking a look at, for instance, we have Mega Man The Wily Wars, the cheapest one I could find on eBay. Not looking at bootleg versions, repros, the cheapest original cart I could find, $450. So we saw Alien Soldier from the compilation disc, $440. Mega Man The Wily Wars, $450. Monster World 4, another heavy hitter. If you're trying to import it from Japan, $223. However, that's not it. Initially, there were supposed to be 40 games released for the Sega Genesis Mini. There are 2 additional games. And you ask, what are these games? First of all, Darius, or Darius, depending on your pronunciation, but Darius. Wonderful shooter. Now, Darius 2 came out on the Mega Drive in Japan. However, we're seeing Darius 1. I did an eBay search. I didn't see this. I'm not sure if M2 decided to work their magic, get an arcade board of this game, and figured, okay, it's the same generation time. We can bring this over to the Genesis Mini or Mega Drive Mini based upon location you are. They're making it happen. We're going to play this on our HD TV sets, through HDMI, through the Sega Genesis Mini. And then, it's difficult to put a price tag on it, but Tetris on the Sega Genesis Mini. Now, you must think, what's the big deal about Tetris? Well, there were less than 10 copies of this game physically made on the Mega Drive. It was never released, right? Nintendo was able to license this popular puzzle game Tetris. We saw on the NES, we saw the sequels, Tetris 2, and different iterations of Tetris have gone on since then. However, there was a Genesis version made. If you take a look on Last Gamer, Joel Hopkins, he's got one of those really rare Tetris cartridges. So the average gamer, can play this game on the Sega Genesis Mini when the system comes out. So, $20 versus $80. I mentioned a lot of games. Oh, and by the way, the total cost of those games that are not included on the compilation disc, that are only exclusive on the Sega Genesis Mini as far as a compilation goes, looking at $968 value. That does not even include, what's the value of Tetris? What's the value of Darius? Those are games that have never been seen before, so where do you put a monetary value on that? Certainly there's options. Some people do, MAME cabinets, do stuff on their computer, emulation, and so forth. However, it's not official. You're playing something officially done, sanctioned by Sega. This is not an AT Games, rip-off, trying to make an easy buck using, Sega properties. No, this is Sega made, Sega produced, and not just licensed. So it's almost, I'd say, an even break. So I think also the other thing too is that you get to have that home experience. You never got to experience it with so many great games utilizing current generation technology. So, a lot of us have HD TVs or 4K TVs, HDMI. Finding old tube TVs, a lot of people don't have those. It can be a challenge trying to hook up older systems this day and age. And now you can have a chance to play 42 awesome games right out of the box with 2 controllers for $80. So when you compare it to other classic mini systems such as Nintendo's NES Classics, Nintendo Super NES Classics, certainly the Sony's PlayStation 1 Classic system, we saw how well that did as far as kind of a debacle as far as the release goes. But Sega went all in, and it looks like they got the best of the best to do their work to make this perfect gift for anyone leading up to the holiday season, or just maybe a gift to yourself. So The choice is yours. Both, I think, are fantastic values. Question is that, how long will we see the Sega Genesis Mini? Will it come out and then be gone? We saw what happened with the NES Classic. That they came out, and eventually they were bought up, and then we weren't seeing any more, and the prices skyrocketed. Could we possibly see something like this? That's a possibility. So you might want to ask yourself, if you're not willing to pay the $80 now, is it something that you want to pay perhaps $200 later? That's certainly a possibility. We saw prices skyrocket like that back only a couple of years ago. So I know I'll be picking one up. Thankfully, I've got this compilation disc. Thankfully, I can play Virtual Cop 2 on my Dreamcast. So this is Kermit, the Gaming Hermit, and I'm looking forward to making another quality video. Certainly, go out there, go enjoy some Sega consoles, get yourself pumped up, get yourself ready, because the Sega Genesis Mini, it's coming if you're ready for it or not. This is Kermit the Gaming Hermit, and I'll see you later. Take care.